Hi, everybody. Welcome to Busy Living Sober with Elizabeth Chance and our guest author, Susan Salenger, who is the author of Sidelined, which is, oh my gosh, I just had this title right here. What did I just do? A Sidelined, How Women Can Navigate a Broken Healthcare System. How we can navigate a broken healthcare system.
Right.
It's so interesting that we're going to be talking about this. Before we go any further, I'm going to give a shout out to our sponsor, SoberLink. Getting sober requires a rewiring of the brain. Instead of reaching for a drink, we have to learn how to reach for support. It can be hard, especially if you don't have something or someone to keep you honest. That's why I've teamed up with SoberLink. SoberLink's remote alcohol monitoring system is designed to help you sustain a sober lifestyle while rebuilding trust with loved ones. It's small enough to fit in your purse or your pocket and discreet enough to use in public. SoberLink devices combine facial recognition, tamper detection, and real-time results so friends and family know instantly that you're sober and you're working towards your recovery goals. As a recovery coach, I can't think of anything better to demonstrate commitment to sobriety. So visit www.soberlink.com and to learn more and receive $50 off your device. So thank you, SoberLink. Okay, Susan, I think it is brilliant.
I'll take that.
For writing this book, because which you mentioned in your book, because I'm going to put a picture, I'm going to show everybody the picture of the book if you're watching on YouTube or on my website. You know, so many of us think that we need, like, for one, the doctor is Allah, right? It's like God and the word of the Lord. And we don't have time to take care of ourselves because we're too busy raising families.
It's true.
And we're the last on the totem pole.
Yeah. Absolutely. There was a study done a while back where women were given a list of 5 things and asked to prioritize them. You know, of course, we put our children first. Second, we put our elderly parents. Third, I think we put our significant others. Fourth was, oh no, I forgot our pets. First was children, second was pets, third was elderly parents, fourth was partners, significant others, and last was ourselves. And it should be the other way around, because we really can't take care of others if we are not taking care of ourselves. I mean, think about when you don't feel good, you're irritable, you get pissed, you feel like crap, you're not in a good place. So it's really it's back asswards, if you'll pardon the expression.
I agree with you 100% because, and I talk about this a lot on the podcast and how, it's like when we're on an airplane, we have to put the oxygen mask on us first.
That's right. That's right.
And we're always last. Our self-care, our self-love, all of that is last in line. So you decided to write this book after you were having some problems. Do you want to tell us that story?
Yeah, this, it was kind of an interesting journey. Years and years and years ago, I mean, when I was in like my 30s or something, I had changed hormone pills and I had started some vaginal bleeding. So I assumed it was the new hormone pills. I mean, it was obvious to me. And the doctor said, no, it's not. I've never had anybody with this experience before, and he did a bunch of tests and everything, of course, came out fine. He was just sure it wasn't the pills. So he said I needed exploratory surgery. And what was so interesting to me is I knew he was wrong. I mean, he was a lovely man and he was concerned and he was thorough and all of those. I have no anger towards him. I mean, I was a young mother with young kids. He didn't want me to die and he was thinking of ovarian cancer. I mean, I appreciated that. But nevertheless, we did the surgery. I was fine. I switched back to my old pills. And of course, all my symptoms stopped. But, I said, I was pissed off at myself, but I set it aside. And then years later, when I retired, I went back to school and did a project of all things on women who had had hysterectomies. And I interviewed some women and they too, some of them had agreed to the hysterectomy surgery, even though they felt that they didn't need it. And so that, of course, triggered my original issues. And I really began to wonder, and in some ways still do, how as women do we make our medical decisions? What goes into that decision? And why do we keep agreeing to things that we're not really sure we need? I mean, there were so many things I could have done. I could have gone for a second opinion. I could have waited and gone back. I mean, the possibilities were endless, but there it
But
was.
at that time, because you're 30 years old and you have kids, you've got things to do. And I
Right.
can tell you that a similar thing occurred with me. I had, I was taking hormones and I was actually doing a pellet, and people now are talking about these pellets because for so long, am I right in this, that they didn't even want us really to take hormones because it was so associated with getting cancer.
Right. I was on them for actually before menopause. I was on them for osteoporosis. I was young, and I'm little, and I have fragile bones. But nevertheless, I mean, if you take a new medication and you get a symptom, guess what? It's probably related. I mean, it's not that tricky, but it was to me at the time. I mean, I'm older now. I wouldn't consider that. You learn your lesson.
You do. And with moms that are out there today, in fact, I was talking to someone earlier this morning, and she's in her 40s and she has 3 young children. And I told her that you were coming on. I was so excited because I said, oh my gosh, you're going to have to listen, because I think that Susan's going to maybe hopefully talk about this. So she's in her 40s. So she's done with having children, but she hasn't started necessarily with the menopause, maybe premenopausal. And our hormones fluctuate so much. And she said to me, she goes, is this crazy? I just got my period. All I want to do is stuff my face, which she feels terrible about. Right. And then she was talking about how her mood, with the kids, because you get your trigger is like, this teeny, you've got this very low threshold of being able to deal with little anxieties with kids and that sort of thing.
Oh, of course.
And why does that happen?
Well, bodies age. That, fortunately or unfortunately, I guess it's better than not aging. The alternative's not so terrific. But bodies age and hormones shift around, and you do get moody. I was lucky, though, in the sense that I did have some hot flashes during menopause, but just for a few weeks, and then they went away. So I really did not have a bad. I know I can see people can't see your face, but I can, or maybe they can. I know I was really lucky. I'll tell you about my mother, who one day realized that she hadn't menstruated in about a year and thought to herself, gee, I bet I'm in menopause, and never had a symptom. Can you believe that? So my genes in that department were pretty good. I had some bad hair days, but nothing overly spectacular.
But for some of us, it is. I will tell you this. I was in the hair salon on Thursday and I ran into a woman. I'd never met her before in my life. I'm living in a new town now. And she came in and she was so upset and distraught because she herself is a doctor. And she said, no one told me that you can wake up and your entire life has changed. You lose your pep. You lose your
I've heard
drive.
that.
And she's a doctor. She's a medical doctor herself. And she said, and no one is really wanting to help her. So what do you say to somebody that's out there, even a medical doctor herself that's been in school?
That surprises me because, I mean, particularly menopause is all over the news right now. There's a million podcasts. I've been on many of them about menopause. I mean, it's not my specialty, but it's true. There's truly an awful lot of them out there saying exactly what you've said. And I think maybe it would be helpful to people that are going through this just to tune them in, to find the right ones. And because there's so many, you can choose the one that fits you the best. Because it is a difficult time for so many women. And I'll tell you something interesting, because when I wrote this book, I had a chapter in there on menopause and menstruation, and they sort of dropped off for whatever reason. I don't remember anymore. But I had more trouble finding women to talk about their menopause because nobody I found had issues. So until I got on all these podcasts and realized how difficult it is for people, I mean, it was one of the hardest. I interviewed women for everything, and it was no problem. I had more than I knew what to do with. But menopause, I couldn't find anybody. Isn't that weird?
That
I
is
have,
so cool.
I
Do you
know.
think that it was that secret? Do you think it was the shame that maybe, because I think that would, and you talk a lot about the shame that women feel towards themselves and not
Yes.
wanting to talk about what's really going on with them.
I think in terms of menopause, I don't know. I truly don't know. I didn't think about it in that way, and you very well could be right. I don't think the particular women I interviewed were not ashamed. But shame is such a big thing for women. In fact, that you gave me a good opening here, because I wanted to talk about for a minute your sponsor. Is it something sober? What,
Yes.
and
I'm in long-term recovery myself, so I haven't had a drink in over 17 years, and I help other people to get managed life. Sober Curious is really big these days, and finally putting down the drink and realizing what alcohol really does to our bodies.
I know it's terrible. It's terrible. And I mean, you would know this better than me, but I've been told that alcohol is one of the most difficult addictions to get over. I mean, even heroin, they give you methadone to kind of lessen the stress of it all. But alcohol, your boy, it's cold turkey. But one of the things that you did mention, and I want to talk about for a minute, is the need for support. And I don't care if you're getting sober. I don't care if you're recovering from cancer. When I say I don't care, I mean, it makes no difference. We all need support. And I was so startled to go back to the shame thing, which you mentioned, is so many women I interviewed had never talked with anybody else about their illness because they were so ashamed of themselves for getting sick in the first place. And we all need support. We need each other when we're sick. You know, I put together a couple of focus groups just because I'm in California and I wanted some geographical diversity. And I put together two groups. And in both groups, most of the women, if I maybe even all of them, had never talked with anybody other than their doctor about being ill. So what happened in the focus groups is because they all had different illnesses. And so they found out that they all had similar concerns, not similar symptoms because the illnesses were different, but they all had similar emotional issues. And they were all so happy to talk to each other. I mean, I had hired a facilitator and we didn't need her. I mean, they were just going back and forth. So please, please, please make sure that whether you have an addiction or an illness or whatever, get yourself some support. It will help you. It will help your healing. You'll feel better about yourself.
Oh, I speak to that all the time, Susan. I believe that we spend so much time being ashamed, being worried about what others are going to think about us, we think less of ourselves all the
Right.
time. And we beat ourselves up all the time because we're not, and I'm doing air quotes if you're listening to this, being the perfect mommy or the
Right.
perfect wife or the perfect partner. And I don't think there is such a thing. Do you?
No, not at all. In fact, what I found, which I thought was so interesting, is so many of the women blamed their illness. Again, whatever it was. I mean, some had breast cancer, some had lupus. It didn't matter. They blamed their illness on stress and their inability to manage their stress. So they saw their illness as, oh my gosh, everyone's going to see now that I really can't manage my life, that I really suck at managing the stress. And that's why I got sick. So they were embarrassed. They were ashamed. They kept it a secret. Some of them even put off going to the doctor. They didn't want the doctor to say, yes, you're stressed. Here's an antidepressant. That's what your problem is. So I think that shame is it's a biggie. Let's put it that way. Biggie is a new professional term.
It is a biggie. It is a biggie. So what are the three most common hurdles you think that women need to overcome? Healthcare is such a tricky thing today. Now,
yes.
I'm going to say for myself personally, my husband works for himself. So we pay for our own health insurance, right? And that's a whole game within itself. You're like, wait a minute. So I pick door number 1, door number 2, door number 3.
You got it. Yeah.
Right. And you have no idea. And you try to read more and you don't find out anything. What are your first things that you tell people to look for when getting healthcare?
The first thing I think you need to look for, and I feel very strongly about this, is you really want a doctor that you like and that you feel likes you. And that sounds like such a simple thing, but you want to make sure that you feel listened to, that you feel cared about. And believe it or not, that will really help your healing. There's been studies done that women who feel their doctor likes them and cares about them will follow through on taking their medication. They'll follow through on their treatment recommendations. That's one reason it helps your healing, because you do what you're told. So I think that that's really important. And I think the second thing, which is mostly your question, but not totally, but I want to make sure I get this in, that I think it's very important when you go to the doctor that you do that you have a written list. I want you to do certain things. You need to write down your list of symptoms. And I'm saying that because that's one of the only ways you'll make sure that your doctor visit gets accomplished what you want to accomplish. And if you're like me and you just have your list of symptoms or concerns in your head, I get so anxious when I walk into the doctor's office, I completely forget them, and I'll forget to mention stuff. So it's really important to write your symptoms down and prioritize them. And it's also really important to get when you get a diagnosis, you want the doctor to give you the clinical name of the disease and to spell it for you, because at least if you're like me, you're a terrible speller. And so you want to go home and look it up, and because there's so many diseases out there. This blew me away. There's like 40,000 or 60,000 diseases out there, and those are just the ones we know about. So it's easy for the doctor to make a mistake. It isn't necessarily incompetence. They're not necessarily blowing you off. It's just sometimes diagnosis is really tricky. So get the name of the disease so you can verify it for yourself. And you want to ask your doctor, what else could this possibly be? Because there are so many diseases out there. What made him or her or them zero in on that particular diagnosis? And then here's the most important thing, is you want to repeat back what you hear your doctor say. That gives you a chance to make sure that you heard correctly. It gives your doctors a chance to make sure that they said what they really meant to say. And I think if you do those three things, that you will really feel cared about, you will end up feeling listened to, because your agenda will have been met and hopefully, let's hope, completed. So I think that was a roundabout answer to your question, but I think those are very specific tips that will help you get what you need.
So I think you would give me an A. So I'm going to give you an example. So I moved here to this new area, and I went and I saw this doctor, and I went to get my physical, and she sends me to get my blood work done. Right. And Quest, at least for here, when I got my blood work back, it had red on it. Like, oh my God, the world's, everything was green and then red. And I was like, oh,
that's what I would freak.
Yeah, that's what I was freaking. Yeah. And I called the doctor's office 3 different times and no one answers. They said, oh, we'll have her call you. We'll have her call you back. We'll have her call you back. She never calls me back. Luckily, I have another doctor at the Mayo Clinic who I actually sent the blood work to. He wrote me back right away and said, everything's fine. You actually look better than you did before. But this doctor, I ended up sending her a message through the portal. And I said, I can't believe you haven't gotten back to me. I said, there is red on this report, and I'm very worried about it. And the fact that you haven't responded is not okay with me. You better get back to me right away. She calls me back. And she goes, well, wait, I didn't know. And I said, excuse me, my love language is, you need to tell me when you get my blood work, even if it's an email that says, by the way, you're okay.
Right. Yes. And, that leads me to something else. So many times the doctor will say, well, we'll call you if there is a problem. Always call yourself and get your results. You want to, and they probably will call you. I'm not implying that they won't, but it's also very easy to get lost in the system, as you might have. I don't know why she didn't call. That's amazing, So it's really important to be empowered, take charge of yourself, take charge of your health. It's important.
But so many of us are so scared, and you mentioned this in your book a lot, because when you call the office, they sometimes speak to you in such a condescending manner that you're like, I'm not going to call. I'm bugging them. I don't want to bug. You talked about that a lot in your book.
Yeah, I actually do. That's really about getting second opinions, which I'm also, I don't mean to proselytize here, but I think it's so important to get second opinions. And I do think it's important to do your own calling. And if they talk to you in a condescending manner, either find another doctor or just ignore it and get the information you need. Let them be condescending as long as you get what you want. That's what's important. And we're also afraid that we're going to hurt the doctor's feelings. We're going to be rude. We're going to be a pain in the neck. I mean, whatever it is. And again, it's your body. You've only got one and you want to take care of it. You really do. And I can tell you now, I mean, I'm older, I'm going to be 81, which I can't believe in a couple of weeks. And I think it really pays off to take care of yourself, because the quality of life I have now with my health in particular is just, it's wonderful. And it's all the exercise I've done and all the not dieting in terms of losing weight, but watching my diet. I mean, it can be really hard when you guys are younger. I know that. But trust me, the best thing to do for old age is prepare for it. And that means take care of yourself. Put yourself first.
And when you have those thoughts like, oh, I can't do it. I've got to make dinner. and the kids won't eat this. They're only going to eat chicken nuggets and they're only going to eat this.
That's right.
And what am I going to do? How am I going to force these vegetables down them? And what do you say to that?
I say, you can't make eating a big issue. We all survived chicken nuggets in childhood. I mean, we do. I mean, I bought my teenage grandson had a party here the other night, and I bought a ton of soft drinks, and there's now like 3 left. They're probably all going home with cavities and stomach ache. But I guarantee you they'll survive, because you have to choose your fights. I think that's what I'd say. It's nice to make sure your kids eat healthy, but you only have so much control. But what you can control is what you eat. And hopefully they'll mimic you. That's the best I can offer. But only yourself is really under your control. And even that can be iffy. So, watch what you eat. What can I say?
And when we go and we pick a doctor, how many would you say that you need to interview? And do you interview the doctors prior to going and actually signing on the dotted line and saying, okay, yes, here's my HIPAA form. You get to be my doctor.
Yeah, well, I think I have to think back, because I haven't done that in a while. But the first thing I do is when somebody gives me a name, or I have the name, let's say John Doe or Jane Doe, depending, whatever. And I look them up. I do my research. I want to know where they did their training. Where did they go to school? Where did they do their residency? What's their specialty? I mean, if their specialty is rheumatoid arthritis, I think twice, only because I don't have rheumatoid arthritis. I have cardiac issues. So I want somebody whose specialty is cardiology. So that's important to me. And then I go and I meet them, and I see if I feel any chemistry, if there's any compatibility, do I feel brushed off? Do I think they're competent? All of those questions. And you can only tell that, I think, by really making an appointment and going in person. And then the other thing I always do, and I forgot this in the research, is I look to see what hospitals they're associated with, because I do have a cardiac issue, and someday I may need heart surgery. I don't have any symptoms, so I hope not. But nevertheless, if they're associated with a hospital whose cardiology record is good, that makes me feel better. If hospitals have different specialties, some excel in neurology care, some excel in cardiology care. I mean, you want the one that fits your particular profile. And I think that that's important too. So again, it's all about the research. I don't leave anything to chance. How's that? I really love
that. I love that. So when this happened to you originally, have you always been an author? What made you write this book?
Well, what made me write the book was more than not my personal experience aside. It was after I retired. My husband and I were in business together, and we sold our business, and that lasted about 12 seconds. I have just retirement and me did not get along. So I went back to school and I took all these anthropology classes, and I loved them. I ended up in medical anthropology, which I don't have a degree in, but I loved the classes. And I learned all kinds of information, much of which is in my book, that women don't know. Academics write for each other. So this stuff is not publicized. And so I didn't know, for example, that women with cardiac issues have more trouble getting treatment and receiving a diagnosis than men do. So that was important for me to know, because I have cardiac issues. And I didn't know that men and women talk to doctors differently, and that sometimes the way we present our symptoms can lead a doctor to give us a psychological diagnosis rather than an organic one. I didn't know all that. And this is stuff that should be getting out there, and it isn't. That was why I wrote the book.
And then what do you think about the difference between regular medicine and Western medicine?
Well, I think Western medicine is regular medicine.
I meant Eastern medicine. I'm sorry.
I don't know much about Eastern medicine, and I'm told that it's very, very successful, but I'm also a strong believer in Western medicine. I think we've just come up with some remarkable treatments, some remarkable diagnoses, some remarkable cures. I'm a total proponent of it. What I'm not a proponent of is getting brushed off by the doctor, and some of them do that. I mean, let's face it, there's jerks in every profession. I don't care what we're talking about. I don't care if we're talking about doctors, plumbers, hairdressers. I mean, it doesn't matter. So you just want to make sure that your doctor is not one of the jerks, and most of them aren't.
And why do they get preferential treatment than we do?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think for one thing, and it's a structural issue. And by that, I mean, women's diseases get less research money than men's diseases. Prostate cancer gets far more research money than uterine cancer, ovarian cancer, cervical cancer. And those cancers, our diseases, as I call them, are more fatal, but prostate cancer gets the money. And then what I also learned, which surprised me, is that women researchers get less money, or let's say, given grants less often than men researchers. And not only that, but women researchers are published less often. So the women's research doesn't get out there. I mean, if you're a woman researcher researching a woman's disease, you're going to find yourself at the bottom of the funding and publication barrel. So I think that really, and it's not the doctor's fault at all, but we know less about women's bodies than we do about men's bodies. Women were omitted from clinical trials for years. It's much better now, and I think it's a pretty much equal distribution, but we're still living with the history of a white 6-foot male being the prototype for so many symptoms and prescription drugs. And it does women a huge disservice, but it's getting better. It really is.
It has to get better. What can we do?
Not much, because a lot of that is not under our control. All we can do, and this is unfortunate, and maybe if enough of us do this, it will change the structure. But again, we have to take care of our own health. We have to be empowered. I can't say it enough. I mean, you've got one body, it's yours. For better or for worse, you're stuck with it. Take care of it and make sure that you find the right doctor, that the diagnosis is accurate, that you follow up with a second opinion or third opinion if you need it. Don't just say, oh, well, the doctor was probably right, so I'll do what I'm told. You want to make sure that what you're told is accurate.
And when you were talking earlier about stress and how women were saying, oh, it's my fault because I'm stressed, because today we hear so often that stress is really a killer.
Right.
Why is that?
Well, stress really affects your immune system. It affects every cell in your body. I'm not saying that stress and illness are not connected. They are. And your illness may very well be due to stress because your immune system's lowered, and women do suffer more from stress and anxiety than men do. But, there's also a lot of viruses and bacteria out there that also can cause your illness. So you can't just say, oh, well, I'm stressed, and let it go. And stress may be the reason you caught the bacteria or virus in the first place. But nevertheless, you need to have the disease treated. And if stress is the disease, then you do want to take whatever you're told to take to help you deal with your stress, for sure. But I would not accept that as just, it's called a wastebasket diagnosis. If the doctor doesn't know what you have, they blame it on stress. That's particularly true with autoimmune diseases. So again, just get a second opinion, get a third opinion, do whatever you need to do. And I don't know how that works with insurance. It probably depends on each case.
But women have so much more. I mean, I understand men have stress, but they go to the office and they do what they have to do, and then they come home. And the woman has to, not only does she have to have a job now, because everything's so much more expensive.
Right.
She has to raise these children. And then during COVID, she had to teach them school as well.
Right. Can you imagine?
No, I can't. I would have been, I couldn't have made it. I definitely
I know
would.
my kids are old too, so I didn't have to do it. But yeah. Whew. That
I mean,
I have a good friend, has 3 young kids, and she was going from, kid to kid to kid. I mean, it took her whole day, literally.
I mean, and then to think that we have our hormones that are going on. And what do you think about hormones today?
I don't know that much about it, only because I'm so far past that, and I'm much more interested. I mean, I shouldn't say it like this, but I am much more interested in women's behavior than I am in the physiological side of it. And I don't know. I really don't know anymore about hormones. I started to take them years ago when I was younger, and that's when the breast cancer scare came out. So then I went off them. And by the time the breast cancer, I think that's now been disproven. So I don't really know much about hormones. I would do what my doctor said and make sure that the prescription was the correct one.
And women that are out there, like the one that I was talking about this morning, who's out there and she's wondering why she's not calling the doctor, and she gets scared and she's like, and the kids, it's still summer. The kids aren't back in school yet. I have no time to do that. What is your advice to them?
You mean, I would advise her to call the doctor if she's not feeling well? Is that what you're saying? I kind of missed the.
Yes, like that she's not feeling great, but it's more of not having her, her hormones being like this.
I think that she needs to call the doctor. I think anybody does under the circumstances, and that probably is the correct explanation. But the only way to be sure is to go through your doctor and run the necessary tests, or take the hormones and see if they help, which they may or may not if it's an incorrect or inaccurate diagnosis. She's guessing is what I'm saying. And she's probably right, because we know our own bodies, but I sure would want to validate it before I just lived with it. So, that's the other thing, being afraid to call the doctor. It makes how do I say this? A minor situation can very easily turn into a major one if you let it go. I'm not a proponent of let's wait and see. I'm really not. Let's wait and see if the lump in my breast turns malignant? No, thank you. That's not my MO at all. I'm more proactive than that.
I love that. And what are your top 3 tips for women who want to better manage their health and decision-making capabilities?
Find a doctor with whom you feel compatible. Ask your questions, go in with that list and ask every question on it so that you get what you need to get. And last but not least, be empowered. I'm going to say it yet again. It's your body. And you know it better than anybody else. You may not know the science of it. You may not know what's going on inside as well as the doctor does. But I knew that original doctor. I mean, I know I don't take new medications easily. I react to everything. That's just who I am. I knew that. But yet I let myself be railroaded, really, because I was scared. I would, as I said earlier, I would not do that today. And that is my basic message. A second opinion is worth its weight in gold. And I think that that's a very important thing to remember.
I love that. And today there's so many different diseases, as you mentioned, and so many things coming down the pike that we had never even heard of before.
That's right. That's so true. That's so true.
Yeah, the psoriatic arthritis that I have, I had no idea. And the crazy, but I've had, it's just what I have today, and I'm dealing with it in the best way I can, eating well and doing all that.
That's all you can do. Yeah.
Yes. Exercising and doing all of that.
Yep.
Well, and my last question is, what has this book taught you about yourself, Susan?
Well, it's taught me that I really need to depend on my intuition more. I mean, it goes back again to being empowered, but I didn't trust myself. And now I do. First of all, that's the book helped me with that. It's also age. I mean, I was a kid, but nevertheless, I do trust my instincts. And if I question my instincts, which I also think is important, I do the research to find out whether my questioning is relevant, valid. So, I mean, at the same time, I'm saying trust your instincts. I'm also saying if you're insecure about that, do your research so that you know whether or not your instincts are telling you something you really need to hear. And I mean, that's all I can, that's what I learned. And that's what I do now. I really do.
And so everybody that's out there, you have to know that you know yourself and trust
Right.
that inner voice as much
Yes.
as you think that, oh, it can't be. Trust the inner voice.
Exactly. And I think that if you do that, I think that it will really help you avoid a lot of unnecessary situations, unhelpful situations.
Well, thank you so much today for writing this book for us, because I feel like this has been long in coming, because we all need this.
Yes, I think so. I do. That's why I wrote it. So thank you very much for having me. I want as many women to hear about it as possible. I mean, I was just surprised at the amount I didn't know. You never know what you don't know. I mean, really.
You really don't. And we always, as we talked about earlier in this conversation, we always put ourselves at the end of the line instead of putting us at the front.
Right. And when you think about it, that doesn't make a whole lot of common sense, because you can't take care of other people if you're not feeling well.
Oh,
you just can't. I mean, you can, but it's not as productive as if you feel great,
Oh, exactly. That's why I said to this doctor when I got these, I said, I've got people that need me.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's not a good story.
Well, thank you again. And are you going to write another book, do you think?
I'm working on another book as we speak, and it's really about listening to yourself. It's called No, It's Not All in Your Head: Women Shame in the Medical Community. So
I can't wait. Well, when it comes out, you're going to let me know.
I just started it. Just so you know, I'm on page 4, but I haven't started it. It's a slow process.
Well, when you have it finished, you have to let me know, and you have to come back on. And happy birthday in a couple weeks, by the way.
Thank you very much. Yes, it's a bit of a shocker, but thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, take care. And everybody, reach out to me. You can always reach Elizabeth at elizabethchance.com, and I will all of Susan's information will be in the bio of today's podcast. And until next time, keep getting busy, living sober. Bye-bye, everybody.